13 points that make a note valuable to us note buyers. And that's not only for creating notes, but also buying notes, right?
Yeah.
Some of the big points is underwriting. And another thing is stickler for us, apologize to get on soapbox, is not writing notes at 8%, right? Because what you guys don't realize when you go to sell it, note buyers discount based on the interest rate, based on whatever return they're looking for. So the higher the interest rate and the lower the term, the less discount you're going to receive from us, note buyer. And if you
Gotcha.
have a lot of margin, I would tell you to rate a first and second, right? So you have a $200,000 property, you're in it for 125. I'd write a first at 140 and a second at 60. And then you could
Hmm.
sell that first loan off at 130, take a small discount, and then you have 60 grand second lien for the next 25, 30 years cash flowing. We don't
Yep.
care, right? We're going to get a nice return, and you guys have a cash flowing cow forever.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually have this particular property that we're talking about. We actually have a little bit greater margins than that. It's we probably it depends on who you talk to. If you talk to Ken, Ken's super conservative, and I'm ultra like fantasy land guy. So I think we've got 100K in this thing after it's all said and done. I think we could have 100K second sitting there just paying us year after year.
Beautiful.
But yeah, so
Let's
so
so let's
I we will
let's
be
go
reaching
back
out
here for a
at some point.
second.
Sorry.
So you mentioned like at the start of your question, we're talking about a note, like a note mortgage deed of trust versus a contract for deed. So that's a fun one. So let's just talk about that for a
Let's do
second.
it. Yep.
It's fun because I'm a huge fan of contracts for deed. That's I when I got started, that's what I did. We were in Ohio, and Ohio they're called land contracts. But that's how I got started in notes was selling houses on terms, creating paper with land contracts. So I'm really familiar with them. I've dealt with hundreds of them, and I'm a big fan. Dave, on the other hand,
What's the big difference, Nathan? For those who may not know, what is the big
yeah,
difference?
big difference is who's on title. Who's on first. That's really the idea. There is on contract for deed, the lender is on title. In a note and mortgage or deed of trust, the occupant, the one living in the house, they're the one on title.
And
That's
foreclosure happens with the without the Ohio exceptions and stuff like that. Most of the
yeah,
time, contract deed it's a forfeiture of contract. It's not a
yeah.
foreclosure process that takes 18 months in Ohio, right? I
Right.
get that. I just don't like the liability of owning the property.
Yeah.
That's the trade-off. And
Yeah.
and ultimately I don't want to own property. However, for me, that's a little different. But yeah, again, lazy investing. I don't want to own property.
Yep.
Yeah. Kind of one of the things that I'm moving into right now. In fact, I've got I'm actually doing this right now. I have an individual who is right there at like that 50% DTI. The debt to income is right there. She could probably go out and get a loan from a bank, but for me, I'm a little nervous about it. Admittedly. So what I am doing with her is I'm using the contract for deed sort of like a rental agreement where
Mhm.
if she performs for the next 12 months, I'm actually going to convert her to a note, and I'm actually going to give her legal title to that
Awesome.
property. And I think that's one thing that I don't know. There's many people that really. I'm sure it happens every day, but I just haven't really heard of anyone using that in that sort of fashion where if you use it on a trial basis. We had to take a property back that we had on contract for deed over here on the other side of the river from us. And man, I'll tell you what, it was easy breezy. It was in Illinois, so it wasn't that much cheaper, but,
Yeah.
but it was super simple. I mean, it was a couple of court dates and that was it. It was done.
You mentioned
Now,
Illinois. Here's
yeah,
something you have to be aware of for note buyers, right? Each state has their laws on what a licensing a note buyer, owner, creator has, right?
mhm,
And Illinois is one of the states where if you own a note, you must be licensed as a debt collector, even if you use a licensed servicer to protect you. You must be in. So us note buyers, there's certain states like Georgia will buy in because we can get a license easily. Illinois, Kentucky, all these states are here that it's just either a long process or expensive to maintain it. So if you only have two notes in there, but it costs you $4,000 a year to register. It isn't worth us to buy the license.
Yeah.
So one of our 14 points is here's the states that we mostly buy in. Create your notes in those states for the better chance for note buyers to be buying your note of.
All right. So what are a few of those states? Give me an example. I'm sure they're
Kentucky,
probably.
yeah, I'm trying to rattle my head. Just Kentucky, Maryland. Maryland goes back and forth. We avoid North Carolina a lot of times. PA, the Northeast is just forget about it.
Yeah.
California, Kentucky,
Oregon.
Oregon.
There's a bit of a trend here.
Yeah.
I'm
The coasts are bad, right?
yeah. I'm seeing
Right.
I'm seeing some similarities.
Another thing we have to worry about is usury law. Make sure you guys know what usury law is and what the max limit is. We don't need to be buying
state.
18%. Yeah.
Yeah, and every state's a little different.
You know, a great point there. So yeah, like Missouri usury here is 10%.
Mhm.
I know you said earlier in the podcast that don't write your notes at 8%. What does 10% look like to you guys?
Better.
Better? I mean, obviously it's better, but I'm saying like give us some of your criteria for give me the ideal note. Give me what an ideal note looks like for you guys.
A legal one, not a fake one.
Okay. So ideal note. I would like it to be in Texas if I had the choice, because if it goes bad, if they quit paying, Texas is the fastest place to foreclose. If we need to go that direction, which I hope we don't. But Texas, I would like a minimum 10% down payment from the borrower. I'm going to buy that note at 25% of like investment to value of the property. I want to make sure there's a good chunk of equity in there for myself. What am I missing, Dave?
You want to be non-rural, right?
Yeah.
I don't want it something with less than 15,000 population where the county is less than 100,000. Ideally, here's another thing for you guys, your crew. Try getting the borrower to pay servicing fees.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because what happens is if that thing's $200 a month or $300 a month, we got to pay out $20 and make sure it's flexible in your note agreement, right? Make that part of your agreement that you literally have the borrower pay servicing fee. It's part of the underwriting process, but allows us to buy it at a net yield versus subtracting that cost.
Gotcha.
So if the language is servicing fees, that the borrower is responsible for servicing fees, then it can transfer from server to servicer. If that fee changes one way or the other, then you're not stuck. So that would be the language I would use, is they pay for servicing fees, whatever that might be.
Yeah, and I see Cindy on LinkedIn mentioned that PA definitely needs licensing. Thanks, Cindy.
Mm-hmm.
So with the rural thing, I want to touch on that real quick. Is that simply just because of I don't know? I follow I use Forex Factory to follow like all the jobs data, the housing data, and all that stuff. Is that the reasoning behind the decision on trying to stay out of the rural areas, or like what is the logic behind that?
I don't want to sell it. I don't want to be stuck with a house that I can't sell. Like, again, we're lazy. We can't sit there for 90 days. And if we have to fix it up, find like contract local, it's not worth our time, energy, and effort. We want to be in and out of that property as fast as possible. And if we're going to go to an auction with it, right, we want to be able to sell it at the auction. It reduces our exit strategy.
Yeah, and Dave and I both came up through non-performing notes. So we joke about this, but only kind of joking. Our expectation, everything is going to default. Everything. Everyone's going to stop paying. And then what? So anytime we're looking at a note, we're always looking at that worst case scenario because we've lived through it. So that's one of those things is, can I resell this house? If it's a town of 2,000 people, that's going to be a lot harder than if it's 20,000.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's literally just, I mean, if you think about it, it's literally just like owning an investor who buys houses would run into the same thing. So you're just kind of transferring that through. I just want to make sure that was clear for everyone, because that could be like, well, what does it matter if they're underwritten? Like if the borrower is underwritten and they've got fantastic underwriting, it's the actual property is the issue, the location is the issue.
This is where it gets kind of funny because with notes, we're not buying the real estate. We're buying the financing behind the real estate. However, we are interested in the real estate because there's a chance, however high or not, like there's still a chance that we're going to end up owning that house. So we are interested in the real estate and we do research on the real estate, but actually we're not. Ideally, we would never actually own that house. We're just interested in the paper with the background being that property.
Right.
So another point is when you're creating these notes, you have the borrower paying servicing fee, you have the rural part of it, right? You have the underwriting part of it, right? So those are all good. If you're gonna do your own servicing, we recommend not doing it. Make sure you don't use a piece of paper or envelope and cash pictures. We've seen them.
Apartments.com. What about apartments.com?
Yeah, we won't name names. Yes, we have someone who actually used apartments.com to track a record, which doesn't help us at all. And the borrower's not getting monthly statements sent,
Right.
which they don't know anything. Again, we're worried about. I know most people who got in this space the last 4 or 5 years, everything's performing. It's all pretty and wonderful. The problem is it's all wonderful until foreclosure happens, and that's when you face the music. And everything you've done that you thought was right is wrong. And that's the problem we're in.
Right.
That's the piece of education that we're trying to put forward now is if you do it properly, you don't have anything to worry about. And we don't have anything to worry about. But if it's done improperly, oh man, it could get really ugly really fast.
Yeah.
All right. So
we'll give you some more points. Give you some more points.
Yeah. I mean, I'm loving it. Like I just want to sit here and just listen. I'm supposed to be the host of this thing. I just want to listen. It's fascinating.
I guess we're also used to hosting our own show too, which is great.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So another thing is type of property. Now this depends on the investor, just like the CFD versus mortgage note. We don't get into buying raw land or mobile home in parks. We just don't do it, right? It's not something we buy, and we get involved with, pass on it quickly as we get into
it. There's other people that do,
yes.
Not to say that it's a total deal breaker, just it's a deal breaker for Dave and I. It's just not something that we do.
All right. Yeah. So no mobile homes, no rural land.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Another thing is, I would tell you guys is seasoning is a questionable thing. We table funding, meaning the fact as soon as you close on it, you want funding. It depends on the investor. I want to see 1 to 3 months of payments. Nathan will buy at the table with arm alone underwriting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, down to preference, and that's one of the cool things about notes is it's so much about just preference of.
Seems very flexible. Like you can be there's no hard and fast rules, unless they're your own.
Yeah, there are some hard and fast, but kind of the adage is there's no such thing as a bad note, just bad pricing.
Yep.
So there is a price for your note, even if it's done all wrong, and even if it's in the wrong state, and there's still a price for that note. You might not love it, but there is a price for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We actually have a chart that shows the expected discount of a note just based on yield. Because you take a 7% note that's over 30 years, and you say, "Listen, what can I possibly get for this thing?" And the question is, okay, first, making sure the term is if the term is shorter, it's great. But I'm looking at my chart now. It's just a kind of an idea of what it looks like. And what happens is if you have, say, a 30-year note at 8%, and we want 14, expect us on a $100,000 note to pay $62,000 to get our yield. So you're going to take a 38% discount because the fact that 8%, you get it up to a 14 is that. Everyone's different of what their yield number is. Our rule of thumb is shoot for a 14 and a 70% investment to value for a note buyer. We can go into the thickness of our calculators and just confuse the hell out of you guys, but it's not worth it.